You know that feeling? You've just white-knuckled your way through an entire month of spending absolutely nothing. No takeaway coffees, no dinners out with friends, no spontaneous little treats that make a Wednesday feel less like a Wednesday. You've painstakingly tracked every single penny. You've said no to everything. You've restricted yourself until you are genuinely, truly miserable. And then the end of the month rolls around and you open up your banking app with this sense of anticipation, expecting to see some dramatic transformation, and the balance looks barely any different. Maybe you saved an extra 50, 60, 70 quid, and you think to yourself, was all of that suffering really worth it? If you have ever felt like you're doing absolutely everything right, budgeting, saving, cutting back, saying no to the things you actually enjoy, but you are still struggling to make any real progress toward financial freedom, I need you to know something. You are not alone, and more importantly, you are not the problem. The advice you've been following is the problem. Welcome back to Quiet Wealth. Hi, I'm Amara, and I'm so glad you've joined me today. If you are new here, welcome to the community. I am a financial educator, and on this channel we focus entirely on playing the long-term, behind-the-scenes wealth game rather than the exhausting, highly visible status game that most of the internet wants you to play. Just a quick note before we dive in. Everything we discuss today is strictly for educational purposes. I'm not here to give you formal financial advice, but rather to give you the honest, behind-the-scenes frameworks you need to make empowered decisions for your own life. Now, before we go any further, I need to ask you to do something. Stick around until the very end of this video, because at the end I am going to walk you through a specific, actionable roadmap, a step-by-step framework that the quietly wealthy actually use to manage their money without ever feeling deprived. It is genuinely going to change the way you think about your finances, and I don't want you to miss it, so stay with me right to the end. Today, I am going to be slightly assertive with you, and I hope you'll forgive me for that, because we need to completely dismantle a toxic trend that is taking over the internet. We are going to expose the buy nothing lie, explain why extreme frugality is actually keeping you broke, and show you exactly how the secretly wealthy manage their spending without ever feeling like they're punishing themselves. So let's get into it. Society loves to tell us that the reason ordinary working people in this country are broke is because of avocado toast and £4 lattes from the coffee shop on the high street. We are constantly bombarded with these messages telling us that if we just had a little more discipline, if we just stopped treating ourselves, if we just put the Gregs down and made our own lunches, we would all be millionaires. And on the surface it sounds reasonable, doesn't it? It sounds like common sense. Very British, actually. Tighten your belt. Stop moaning. Get on with it. But here's the thing. It is a brilliant distraction. It is a sleight of hand. It tricks you into focusing all of your mental energy on tiny, insignificant expenses while completely ignoring the massive structural money drains that are actually destroying your financial future. Think about it this way. Let's say you grab a coffee every single workday. That's roughly 5 coffees a week at around £4 each. So that's about £20 a week, somewhere between £80 and £90 a month. Now, I'm not saying that's nothing, because it's not nothing. But when you zoom out and look at where your money actually goes each month, when you really sit down and examine the full picture, you quickly realize that cutting out the coffees and the lunches and the Friday night takeaway, while it might make you feel virtuous, is not going to make anywhere near as much difference as addressing the main structural costs that are actually driving your finances into the ground. And let me be very clear about what I mean by structural costs. Let us start with the biggest one of all, the roof over your head. Now, the numbers here are genuinely eye-watering, and I think a lot of people don't fully appreciate just how dramatically the landscape has shifted in this country over the past decade or so. Here in the UK, private renters on a median household income now spend well over 30% of their income on rent. And that's a national average. In London and in many parts of the southeast, that figure is substantially higher. The Office for National Statistics has consistently shown that in some parts of the country, renters are handing over 40% or more of their monthly income just to keep a roof over their heads. And for those who have managed to get onto the property ladder in recent years, particularly anyone who bought or remortgaged when interest rates started climbing sharply from 2022 onwards, the situation can be just as brutal. Monthly mortgage payments that were manageable at 2% suddenly became a very different conversation at 5 or 6%. So just stop and think about that for a moment. A third to almost half of your income gone before you've switched a single light on, before you've bought a bag of shopping, before you've put fuel in the car or bought a rail ticket or topped up your Oyster card. That's before your council tax, your energy bills, your water rates, your broadband, your phone contract. Your income is being consumed by one single expense before you've even started living your life. And this is precisely why the skip the latte advice is so insidious. Because if you are spending thousands every month on housing costs that stretch you to your absolute limit, or if you're paying off a car on finance that you can't really afford, or if you're carrying a mortgage that keeps you awake at night, it genuinely does not matter how many coffees you make at home using your Tesco finest beans. It does not matter how many social events you politely decline, or how many meal deals you pack yourself. You will still feel completely and utterly stuck, because the big numbers are the ones that matter. And nobody on the internet wants to talk about the big numbers, because they're harder to fix and they don't make for snappy, shareable content. This is the fundamental problem with the buy nothing trend. It asks you to use sheer willpower, raw discipline and grim determination to fight against a fundamentally broken financial structure. And the secretly wealthy know something that the extreme frugality crowd doesn't. You cannot simply save your way out of a bad structural setup. If your fixed costs, your rent, your car finance, your insurance, your subscriptions, your minimum debt repayment, if all of that is eating up 75 or 80% of your take-home pay, then skipping a £15 lunch is like trying to empty the Thames with a teaspoon. You are exhausting yourself for pennies while the pounds are hemorrhaging out the back door. And I want to stay on this point for a moment because it brings us to something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, and that is the psychological cost of extreme frugality. Every single decision you make during the day uses a little bit of mental energy. Every time you weigh up whether to buy something or not, every time you check a price and calculate whether it fits within your budget, every time you tell yourself no, that uses cognitive resources. And the more of those small, restrictive decisions you have to make throughout the day, the less mental capacity you have left for the things that actually matter. Psychologists have a term for this, decision fatigue, and the research on it is really well established. The idea is that our ability to make good decisions deteriorates the more decisions we make throughout the day. It's like a battery that slowly drains, and when you're in extreme frugality mode, when you're running a buy-nothing month, you are making dozens and dozens of these micro decisions every single day. Should I buy this? No. Can I afford that? No. Is this within my budget? Let me check. No. And each one of those little moments chips away at your mental battery. So what happens? You end up spending all of your creative energy and all of your mental bandwidth trying to save £3 here and £5 there, and you are left with absolutely nothing in the tank for the things that actually build wealth. Things like learning a high-value skill, things like working on a side hustle, things like preparing for a promotion at work or negotiating a better salary, things like researching ISAs or pension contributions or reading about investment strategies, the stuff that actually moves the needle. The stuff that actually changes your life over a 5 or 10 year period. All of that gets crowded out because your brain is too tired from agonizing over whether to buy the own brand cereal or the branded one. And there is an even deeper problem with extreme frugality that goes beyond decision fatigue, and it's something I see constantly in this community and in the comments on videos like this one. Extreme frugality often misses the entire point of why we want wealth in the first place. I see this cycle play out again and again. Someone sets a savings goal, they work incredibly hard, they sacrifice, they deprive themselves, they hit the goal, and instead of feeling accomplished, instead of feeling proud and satisfied, they immediately move the goalpost. They tell themselves they just need to save a little bit more, just another 6 months, just another year, just get to the next round number. And they live in this permanent state of deprivation, perpetually chasing the next milestone, but never actually arriving anywhere. And here's what I want to say to anyone caught in that cycle. There is no point being miserable on the journey to a supposedly happy destination, because I can almost guarantee that when you finally get there, if you ever let yourself get there, you will look back and realize that the journey was actually the point. The years you spent grinding and saying no to everything, those were your years. Those were your 30s or your 40s or your 50s. That was your actual life happening, and you spent it in a state of self-imposed restriction. The real goal, the healthy goal, is to spend on what genuinely matters to you while simultaneously building your future. Because what is the point of financial freedom if, by the time you achieve it, you have forgotten how to be free? What is the point of having money if you've trained yourself so thoroughly to never enjoy anything that you can't actually enjoy the money when you have it? So if extreme frugality is not the answer, and I hope by now I've made a compelling case that it isn't, what do the quietly wealthy actually do instead? They use a concept that I call value-based budgeting. and it is a fundamentally different way of thinking about money. Traditional budgeting says, cut everything, restrict everything, minimize everything. Value-based budgeting says something completely different. It says, spend more, sometimes significantly more, on what genuinely aligns with your priorities and cut back ruthlessly, even aggressively, on what doesn't. It's not necessarily about spending less overall. It's about spending right. It's about intentionality rather than restriction. And here's how it works in practice. Before you make some grand declaration about doing a no-spend January, before you post about your Buy Nothing challenge on social media, the secretly wealthy do something much less glamorous, but far more effective. They make sure their necessities, their structural costs, things like housing, transport, insurance, childcare, debt repayments, they make sure those take up as little of their budget as is reasonably possible. Not as little as humanly possible, because that might mean living somewhere unsafe or spending 4 hours a day on buses, but as little as is reasonable for their situation. By keeping those massive structural costs low, they create room, they create breathing space, and within that breathing space, they have the freedom to spend on what actually makes life meaningful without a shred of guilt. And here's the beautiful thing about value-based budgeting. It looks completely different for every single person, because we all value different things. For you, it might mean choosing to spend generously on travel, education, and unique experiences. Maybe you want to take that trip to Japan that you've been planning for years. Maybe you want to invest in a course or a qualification that could genuinely change your career trajectory. Maybe you want to go to gigs and festivals and long Sunday lunches and create memories with the people you love. And in exchange, you care a lot less about designer clothes or having the latest iPhone or driving a flashy car. Those things just don't do it for you, so you don't spend on them, and you don't feel deprived because you never really wanted them in the first place. Someone else might be completely different. They might absolutely love having a beautiful, comfortable, well-decorated home. That's their thing. That's where they feel most alive and most at peace, and they're perfectly happy getting the bus, cooking almost all their meals from scratch, and wearing a simple rotation of clothes from the high street. They're not depriving themselves, they're just directing their money toward what genuinely lights them up. When you spend intentionally like this, something almost magical happens. Every pound you earn starts working for the kind of life you actually want to live, not just the one that looks impressive on paper or that photographs well for Instagram. And that distinction is everything. But to pull this off successfully, and this is where it gets really interesting, you have to completely detach yourself from the status game. And I mean most people, whether they realize it or not, are playing a game where we are all trying to one-up each other. And this is very much alive here in Britain, even if we tend to be a bit more subtle about it than some other cultures. We don't always shout about it, but we absolutely notice it. You get a pay rise, so now you feel the pressure to upgrade the car. You get promoted, so now the flat you were perfectly happy in suddenly feels a bit small. You hit a milestone, so now you start eyeing up a holiday that costs 3 times what you'd normally spend, because somehow it feels like you've earned the right to it. But the secretly wealthy, the people who are actually building real lasting wealth in this country, quietly and without fanfare, they are very aware that real wealth is not about what everyone can see. It's about what is going on behind the scenes. It's about the stocks and shares ISA that nobody knows about. It's about the pension that's being maxed out every year. It's about the emergency fund that means they never lose sleep over an unexpected bill. It's about the rental income or the side business that's quietly ticking away in the background. None of that is visible at a dinner party. None of that gets comments on social media. Their identity is not built on money, so they don't use money to signal identity. And that is a profoundly important distinction. When your sense of self-worth is tied to what you own and what other people can see, you are trapped. You are on a treadmill that never stops because there is always someone with a newer car, a bigger kitchen extension, a more exotic holiday, and you will always feel the pressure to keep up. But when your identity comes from something deeper, from your values, from your relationships, from your sense of purpose, then money becomes a tool rather than a scorecard. Tools are useful. You use them when you need them, and you put them down when you don't. Scorecards, on the other hand, consume you. And needing others to see your wealth is incredibly expensive. Signaling behavior, as economists call it, leads directly to lifestyle inflation and to decisions that are optimized entirely for image rather than outcomes. You buy the car that turns heads rather than the one that makes financial sense. You rent in the postcode that sounds impressive rather than the one that gives you the best value for money. You buy the clothes that signal a certain status rather than the ones you actually feel comfortable and happy in. And every single one of those decisions costs you, not just now, but in the compounding growth you lose on the money you've spent trying to impress people who honestly aren't paying nearly as much attention as you think they are. Quiet wealth allows your money to stay invested and growing, completely unpressured by social comparison. And that compounding over years and decades is what actually builds the kind of financial security that genuinely changes your life and potentially your children's lives too. So now let's get to the part I promised you at the beginning. Here is your actionable roadmap to escape the buy nothing lie and start building a life you actually enjoy. And I mean a life you enjoy now, not just some theoretical future life that you might enjoy someday if everything goes according to plan. Step 1. Audit your big three: housing, transport, and recurring bills. These are the categories where the biggest savings are hiding. And they are the ones that almost nobody wants to confront because they involve difficult decisions and sometimes uncomfortable realizations. Start with housing. Can you downsize your living situation? Could you take in a lodger? If you rent, when did you last actually have a proper conversation with your landlord about what you're paying? Many people never try to negotiate because it feels uncomfortable or cheeky, but landlords often genuinely prefer to keep a reliable, tidy tenant at a slightly reduced rent rather than deal with the hassle and financial cost of finding someone new. Void periods cost landlords money too, so it is absolutely worth having that conversation. If you own your home, when did you last look at remortgaging? If you're sitting on your lender's standard variable rate, you're almost certainly paying significantly more than you need to. Even a difference of 1 percentage point on a £250,000 mortgage is over £2,000 a year. That is not small change. That is a life-changing amount of money over the course of a mortgage term. And speaking to a whole-of-market mortgage broker costs you nothing. Then look at transport. And I want to be direct about this. Are you financing a depreciating asset just to feel a certain way when you drive to work? Because that is what a car on a PCP or HP deal often is. I completely understand that for many people, particularly those living outside of cities where public transport is limited or frankly non-existent, a car is an absolute necessity. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the difference between needing a car and needing that car. The one with the premium brand badge. The one with the monthly payment that makes you wince. The one you chose partly because of how it would look parked outside your house. If you are making monthly payments on something that is losing value every single day, something that costs you in interest charges, insurance, road tax, fuel, servicing, tires, and parking, and you chose it based significantly on image, that is one of the single biggest financial drains you can address. Sell it, pay off the finance, and buy something reliable for cash, even if it's a 5-year-old Skoda, even if it's not remotely glamorous. The difference in what you free up every month could be genuinely transformational. And then look at your recurring bills and subscriptions. This one is so important and so consistently overlooked. Insurance companies, broadband providers, mobile networks, they all rely entirely on your inertia. Their whole business model depends on it. They offer you a brilliant introductory rate, and then they quietly, incrementally creep up your premiums and charges year after year, banking on the fact that you won't bother to switch. It's called the loyalty penalty, and the Financial Conduct Authority have both highlighted how much this costs British consumers every single year. We are talking billions of pounds nationally. The 1-year rule is simple. Every 12 months, aggressively compare deals on every single recurring bill. Your car insurance, your home insurance, your contents insurance, your broadband, your mobile contract, your energy tariff if you're on a variable rate, every subscription service you pay for. Spend an afternoon on it once a year. Use comparison sites like Compare the Market, Go Compare, Money Supermarket, and you switch. Make a few phone calls and switch without sentimentality. You would be genuinely amazed at how much you can save. And unlike cutting out your morning coffee, you do this once and the savings repeat every single month without requiring any ongoing willpower or self-denial whatsoever. Step 2, define what actually brings you joy. And I mean really define it. Not what you think should bring you joy. Not what everyone else seems to be spending money on. What actually, genuinely, deeply matters to you. There's a concept in psychology called the hedonic treadmill, sometimes called hedonic adaptation. The basic idea is that our brains are remarkably good at adjusting to whatever level of comfort or circumstance we find ourselves in. So that pay rise that felt brilliant for the first few weeks, within a couple of months, it's just your salary. That new car that gave you a little thrill every time you got in it, give it 6 months and it's just how you get to work. That bigger house that felt so spacious and exciting when you first moved in. Within a year, it'll just feel like home and you'll be eyeing up the extension. This is the treadmill. We get something new, we experience a burst of happiness, our brain adapts, the happiness fades, and we start looking for the next thing. And the cycle repeats indefinitely unless we make a conscious decision to step off it. Now, I want to be really clear about something here. Money does help, genuinely. Research consistently shows that increases in income are strongly associated with improvements in well-being up to a certain point, primarily because having enough money means you can meet your basic needs, reduce financial anxiety, access better healthcare and housing and opportunities for your children. All of that matters enormously, but beyond a certain threshold, once your day-to-day needs are comfortably covered and you're not losing sleep over money, additional income makes far less difference to your actual lived happiness than most people expect, unless you are deliberately and intentionally directing it toward the things that genuinely matter to you. So I want you to sit down, perhaps with a cup of tea, and actually think about what you want your money to give you. Not what society tells you to want, not what the algorithm serves you on social media. What do you actually want? Is it freedom? Is it security? Is it more time with your family? Is it the ability to travel properly? Is it the ability to leave a job that's making you miserable and do something meaningful? Is it the knowledge that if your boiler breaks down, or your car needs a new clutch, or you have an unexpected bill, you're going to be absolutely fine? Your honest answer to that question should drive every financial decision you make from this point forward. Step 3, and this is the final piece of the puzzle. Automate the boring stuff. You do not want to rely on willpower to build wealth. Willpower is a finite resource. We've already established that, and if your entire financial system depends on you making the right choice every single day, every week, every month, eventually life will get in the way. Not because you're weak, but because you're human, and life is complicated and tiring. So instead of relying on discipline, build a system that does the work for you automatically. Set up standing orders and direct debits so that your rent or mortgage, your bills, your insurance, everything that must be paid goes out immediately after payday before you even see the money sitting in your current account. And most importantly, set up an automatic transfer so that money goes from your main account into a separate savings account or a stocks and shares ISA or your pension before you have a chance to see it and before you have a chance to mentally spend it. This is what financial planners call paying yourself first, and it is genuinely one of the most powerful wealth-building habits that exists. Not because it's clever or complicated, but because it you make the right choice once, you set it up, and then you get on with your life. The money builds quietly in the background without you having to think about it or exercise any willpower at all. And when your saving and investing is automated, something wonderful happens. The money that's left in your current account after all of that, that is genuinely entirely yours to enjoy. You can get the coffee, you can go for dinner with your friends, you can book the trip, you can treat yourself to something nice, because you already know that your future is being taken care of. The system is handling it. You don't have to choose between enjoying today and preparing for tomorrow, because the automation handles tomorrow and you get to focus on actually living your life. And that right there is the real secret of the quietly wealthy. It's not grim self-denial, it's not posting about your no-spend challenge, it's not color-coded spreadsheets that make you want to cry. It is taking control of the big structural costs, being intentional about what you genuinely value, detaching from the status game that wants to drain your bank account in exchange for other people's approval, and building a system, an automated, sustainable, guilt-free system where money serves you rather than you spending your life serving money. That is quiet wealth. That is what we are building here together. And I genuinely hope that today's conversation has given you a different, more compassionate, a more practical way of thinking about all of it. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I really do mean that. Your time is the most valuable thing you have, and the fact that you chose to spend some of it here means an awful lot. If this video gave you a bit of a wake-up call, If it helped lift some of that budgeting guilt that so many of us carry around, if it made you think about your finances in a slightly different way, please hit the subscribe button and join our Quiet Wealth community. We are building a space full of people who are done with the status game, who are tired of performative frugality, and who are ready to take back genuine control of their financial futures on their own terms. And I would really love to hear from you. So please drop a comment below and tell me what your value-based splurge is. What is the one thing you happily spend money on, completely guilt-free, because it genuinely brings you joy? Is it travel? Is it books? Is it really good food? Is it weekends away with people you love? I read every single comment, and I cannot wait to see what makes your life feel rich in the truest sense of the word. Give this video a like so that more people can find it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message today, and have a genuinely brilliant week. I will see you in the next